Create Peace at Home is a show dedicated to the voices of social justice movements.
We bring to you guests who are engaged in making a difference in the lives of those who are forgotten.
We are committed to finding solutions which make people safe and communities thrive.
We believe that people have powerful stories about personal transformation.
When shared, these stories begin a process of healing.
Through these stories, we connect different issues which speak to the equity for everyone.
I'm Boona, Cheema, your host. Welcome to Create Peace at Home.
If it became illegal to sit down on the sidewalk during the daytime, where would homeless people go? Where would people have that they can go to?
Well, seeing how, and I've read the paperwork and the documentation on what they want it to say. They want it to be illegal to sit down in any commercial zone in the Berkeley area, which means that the homeless people are now going to have to be forced to hang out in your neighborhoods, in your city parks, and around basically where you live. Because if we can't be in a commercial zone, then we have to be in residential zones, because there's nowhere near enough benches for all of the homeless people and all of the housed people to possibly share.
In the studio with me today are Osha Neuman from Berkeley. He is a living legend for at least people who have been homeless in this community and who have been harassed by different people at different times for sitting on our sidewalks or taking some time out to get some sleep. We will be speaking also with Bob. Bob, please tell me your last name.
Offer-Westat.
Offer-Westat. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Perfectly.
Bob is going to be managing the campaign for Stand Up for Your... Could you say that for me, Osha or Bob?
We can do it together.
Sure. Do it together.
Stand up for the right to sit down.
That's the campaign for Measure S. We will be talking about why this particular measure has been put on the ballot at this time, when we've had many years which have proven, many years meaning like 40 some years, which have proven that the presence of homeless people has nothing to do with how the business community does in Berkeley or any other city. We hope that you will enjoy our discussion. Welcome, Osha and Bob. Welcome. Osha, let me start with you. As far back as I can remember, you have been an advocate on behalf of people's, homeless folks' civil rights. Can you tell us a little bit of your history?
Quite to my surprise, I became a lawyer in 1987. And one of the very first things I did was I set up my little office, took whatever calls I could get. I got a call from some homeless people who were up in People's Park, living in the trees there in the West End. And they said that at night, because you couldn't be in the park, they put their belongings, their buggies, their shopping carts out on the median strip. And they said they were very upset. They said, you know, we'd been doing that, and then all of a sudden, these trucks came, you know, from the university, these big garbage trucks, you know, the kind that go, you put stuff in, it goes, and they took all our stuff, and they compacted it, and I lost my children's pictures and the Bible for my family and my prescriptions and my medicine. So I went up and talked to them and got their names, and they all told the same consistent story. So I called the police chief of Victoria Harrison at the University of California. I said, you can't do this. You can't just come and take people's stuff and destroy it like that, you know, with no warning. I mean, assuming that it's illegal, you still can't do it. I mean, if somebody's got their Mercedes parked, you know, at some, you know, the meter's expired, you can't take the Mercedes and then just take it to a junkyard and crush it and say, oh, okay. So then, you know, 3 weeks, a month later, it happened again. Mm-hmm. So I sued them. And I had a huge lawsuit against the university, went to trial, went on, and eventually won a judgment in favor of those folks. And that, I mean, I'd been involved with people in the street for years before that, but developed strong relations with them. I began working with them, with other homeless people, and then sort of in private practice got got to know a lot of them, you know, way beyond just sort of being a lawyer. I mean, I was, you know, sort of friends with some of the people, still are, that I met there. One of them is now dead, and I helped him through his dying. For the last 7 or 8 years, I've been working at the East Bay Community Law Center Neighborhood Justice Clinic, and one of the things that we do is we represent homeless people who have been cited for these little diddly-doodly things that people with homes do without any thought whatsoever, like they go to sleep at night and you don't worry that some cop is going to come in and bust you for sleeping in your bed. But when a homeless person needs a place to sleep and they don't have a place that they can buy, they sleep on a church steps, and it becomes trespassing. They sleep in a park after dark, and it becomes a violation of a curfew. Or they sleep on the street, and it becomes lying, you know, blocking a sidewalk.
So would you
So
say,
we represent people on those kinds of offenses, and there's no other place that we can go. We've represented hundreds and hundreds of people with what we call these kind of quality of life crimes, and now Berkeley is about trying to pass a measure that would add a whole nother crime of sitting on the sidewalk into yet another crime that they would cite homeless people for.
So beyond not having other places to go and beyond being pushed into commercial areas, what are your thoughts on the sit lie law?
Well, I mean, the sit lie law, it's basically just, it's a complete low blow against, like, traveler kids or hippie kids or homeless people in general. And the real point behind it is, I've come to understand in my personal opinion, is that it's all intended to raise property value to spike everyone's rent. It's all designed for personal profit. There's no real reason to say people can't sit down, because the occasional person with their backpack sitting on the sidewalk every 1,000 feet or so, because we really don't sit next to each other that often because we can't survive that way, and we like to spread out. If that's obstructing the sidewalk, I don't understand, because there's all sorts of businesses that put things out spewed across the sidewalk impossible to get through, like trash cans on certain days. And, like, yes, certain homeless people may be issues, but at that point, isn't it where, like, you enforce the laws on the people that are breaking the laws and try to, like, figure something real out, or, like, and then plus, like, all the funding that they're gonna throw to, like, have extra, like, police on force and extra people, like, running around to enforce upon all the homeless people sitting, because it's the only people that it's going to get enforced upon, because it's being pushed by the business association, which is strictly against homeless people, because the fact that they quote-unquote bring down revenue, even though that's completely wrong, because 9 times out of 10 you see a homeless person sitting outside of a pizza shop and you're going in to buy a slice. What next? Now all of a sudden you have a slice of pizza and a whole pizza for the homeless people. And I've seen that happen on numerous occasions where people are buying more products because there's homeless people outside of the business.
The folks that, you know, I talk to, because I work in downtown Berkeley, and my office is across from the Downtown Berkeley Association, and I see what's going on in the streets, and have for a very long time, not just Shattuck, but also Telegraph Avenue, that whenever things seem to get uncomfortable, seemingly uncomfortable for people, either the mayor or somebody will collect signatures, or we had Measure NNO 10 years ago. Why do you, and Bob, then I want you to get in this conversation. So why do you think, with, you know, moving along in his career, that at this time he thought it important to put something like this on the Berkeley ballot without really having a conversation in the community?
So the University of California is one of his power base. The University of California, for years, has complained about the street scene on Telegraph Avenue. You know, they have their day where their families come, and they come from Peoria or wherever the heck they come from. And they come to Berkeley and they see people on the street, and maybe they have an experience. They say, well, I'm not going to send my child here. I was panhandled on Telegraph Avenue. And so they want to clean up Telegraph Avenue. They want to clean up People's Park, and I think that's one of his interests. And the other thing is he has a affinity and a constituency in the owners of commercial real estate. He was himself a realtor, involved in that kind of stuff. They've been his support throughout, and it's one of the things that they in particular have been dying to get in Berkeley.
Yeah.
Basically forever. And this one,
Yes.
but this one, they knew the last time they've tried this over and over again. This time they didn't, they just kind of snuck it on. I mean, because when they didn't do that, there was a huge opposition. They got all they realized how extremely unpopular this measure is. And we thought we killed this thing. I mean, because they brought it up last year. What happened, Bob can talk about this.
Yeah.
Whenever one city does it, the others, it's like, oh, they have one of these, we need one of these. So when San Francisco passed its ordinance against sit-lie, they thought, wow, okay, progressive San Francisco passed it, so now we should be able to get one. But so they tried it last year to get it, and there was a lot of opposition. They gave up. We thought they'd given up. They snuck this one on with no public input at the very last minute. Pushed it on, pushed it through the city council in a really outrageous fashion.
And it's going to be selectively enforced because only who really sits on the sidewalk? Homeless people, occasionally high school kids, on occasion the kindergarten class going to get ice cream. They go to the shop, get their ice cream, sit down outside, eat their ice cream, all 30 of these little kindergartners. So they're going to be criminals now too. And if it is selectively enforced, that right there is a violation of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution.
I also don't think that it makes any sense at all, because we've got block by block on the streets with their ambassadors.
Yeah.
We've got bosses, clean street folks. So there's a lot of people out there actually helping homeless folks, bringing in resources, making them feel welcome. I was talking to a young woman that I talk to often, and they're out there selling their trinkets and making things. They're entrepreneurs as far as I'm concerned, many of them. And I asked her, I said, are you doing okay? She said, I've been in Berkeley for 6 years, but I'm gonna leave because it's really getting to be difficult to be here. And so I asked her what that meant, and she said, well, the harassment is going on. We're being asked to, leave where we're sitting. So this ordinance, in a way, is already being enforced, but this will, I guess, give the police an extra piece of paper to give to folks. It just doesn't seem to make sense to me in terms of the effort it's going to take to enforce that when, people have to sit.
Yeah. One thing about being homeless in Berkeley is, Berkeley, it does treat the homeless people a little bit better than a lot of other places. But it's not necessarily better. It's just more passive aggressive. It's really messed up. And then a lot of the cops, they come down here and they enforce on us. They're like, so where are you from? And if you're not from here, you need to leave. And it's like, wait a minute, I've been here since I was 12. Just because I didn't go to an elementary school here doesn't mean I'm not from here. And then on top of all of that, when they go to enforce the sit-lie law, there's going to be extreme, it's not going to be good, because there's going to be hardcore protesting against it, and people are going to be beat up by cops repetitively. Back when they were just starting to put the ballot into discussion, when it was in city hall meetings and whatnot, the cops were out here enforcing upon us twice as hard as they ever did before, beating us up in our sleep. And I mean, if that's what they're doing when just the idea of a sit-lie law measure is showing up, what are they going to pull when there is actually a sit-lie law measure?
We already know that homeless people are
That's
sleep
right.
deprived and traumatized. So every time somebody comes up with one more thing, we're just, really messing these kids up. through that process much more than how difficult their lives have been so far by continuously telling them you're not wanted, you need to leave our streets, we don't
a lot of
want
these
you.
kids have been abused. I mean, these are,
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, you're right, we're talking about kids, because this really is targeted at youth. This
Yes,
is
it
a
is.
war on the most vulnerable, abused children, our children, you know, who have never got anything. Have you talked to them? I know you know this.
Yes,
You know, the
absolutely.
history of physical and sexual and emotional abuse. The numbers who come out of foster care, never had a home, never did anything. You know, whose experience of the adult world is, you know, we don't want you, you have no place here, you know, and then this happens to them. And you're absolutely right that this is like based on mythology. It is based
really
on
is.
no reality at all. They are, as that person told you that you talked to, they are perfectly capable, and they do harass the heck out of people right now with all the laws and with what, you know, this whole panoply of things they can do, and very successfully. I mean, we know this. I mean, there was a huge sort of like psychodrama of fear because there was a group of young people for a while that were in
Next to the library.
next to the library. I call them the Kittredge kids.
Yeah.
I call them that, you know. And, you know, oh my God, you know, it was terrible, these kids there. And, you know, encampment, they have an encampment. They were kids with no families who had
Right.
made a family for themselves, and nobody talked to them. I mean, I went by and nobody had actually talked to them about, you know, they're these feared objects. When you talk to them, they're like kids, you know, they want stuff, you know. Yes, there had been ambassadors. Nobody had, I mean, we went out there with people from the Homeless Action Center. People say, oh, well, they're service resistant. Nobody had offered them. Nobody had actually gone there and offered them, and they were happy to get it, you know.
Yeah.
And they had gotten, I mean, we went out there, they got citation after citation after citation, and basically the police did harass, right now, I mean, they're not around,
Yeah.
you can't say, but that's why, so they're gone. But now we're going to have this law that's going to prevent everybody, you know, in the universe of Berkeley from sitting on the sidewalk. It's completely crazy.
So Bob, you've spent many years in San Francisco.
That's right.
Some with the San Francisco Homeless Coalition. You've been an activist a long time. I admire the work that you do. What brings you to Berkeley to help us out and get this beaten?
I mean, I think that OSHA mentioned that the proposal for Measure S, which we oppose, was based on what happened in San Francisco with Proposition L, our sit-lie law. And I think that we've seen that laws like this, really bad public policies, have been spread from city to city in a few different waves throughout the past 30 years. So I think that it's very true that San Francisco's sit-lie law became Berkeley's problem. Portland's sit-lie law became San Francisco's problem. Seattle's sit-lie law became Portland's problem. These things don't exist in a vacuum. They don't exist in one city. We share these issues. And so for me, if we're able to push back against really bad public policy that's hurting people and isn't helping anybody, you know, maybe in some cynical political sense it helps a few people, but it's not helping the great majority of Berkeleyans. It's not helping the great majority of San Franciscans. If we're able to push back in one place, then I think it helps us in other cities just the same way that bad policy has spread here.
So are you developing a campaign that will allow us to do that? I mean, what strategies are you planning to use to get the word out? And because I don't think people really understand the issue because they've heard it over and over again, and many of the voters don't even come to downtown Berkeley because there's no parking. There's very little that you actually need. There isn't a grocery store, at least not in the downtown, close by now, of course. What would we say to the folks who don't really know what the situation is but believe that it's a dangerous place because there are kids downtown, and so they're not going to go see a movie?
Well, I would say two things, and the first of those is come to downtown Berkeley.
Absolutely, we need the money.
Absolutely. I mean, if you want to talk about the problems that businesses are really facing in Berkeley, it's that there need to be more Berkeleyans shopping in downtown Berkeley. Absolutely. That's number one. Coming to downtown Berkeley would solve the problem. But number two, even if people aren't coming to downtown Berkeley, you're asking what's the campaign going to look like? We're going to come to them. In one sense, we'll be running major portions of what a lot of grassroots campaigns look like. We'll be going door to door, we'll be around Berkeley, we'll be talking to as many people in the city as we can. One thing we found in San Francisco was that if we could get 2 minutes with a person, we could almost always change their mind about sit-lie.
And in those 2 minutes, what did you say?
In those 2 minutes, we talked about the rationality of the law, and we talked about the fairness of the law. Nobody thinks that sitting down on the sidewalk is itself a criminal act. That's patently obvious. We all know that sitting down is a biological necessity, that we all need to rest. And we wouldn't want every person who's sitting down to be cited. So the question is, who's actually going to get cited? And when you break it down to that what we're asking for with the sit-lie law is fundamentally an unfair law. We want a law that will not be enforced across the board. We want a law that will be used specifically to drive certain people out of town. And is that the kind of Berkeley that you want to live in? Is that the kind of legal system you want to have? Do you want to have two sets of laws, one for one group of people and one for another? And typically in a conversation like that, people realize what it is that they're actually looking at with a sit-lie law. So that's the kind of conversation that we need to have. That's the kind of discussion we need to have with all Berkeleyans. And additionally, we need to be talking about what the real solutions are. We need to be talking about the fact that the youth shelter is not open for half the year.
That's right.
Berkeley does invest money in services to a degree, but there's a lot more that's needed, and we're nowhere near reaching what we need to in terms of providing support for the most marginalized and the poorest Berkeleyans. What kind of services are available for homeless people, particularly youth, in Berkeley during the daytime?
Well, during the daytime, we could possibly get a hold of like lawyers if we need them, and like there are places that will kind of help us get like our SSIs and whatnot. But that's a long process either way. As for but for the most part during the day, there's really nothing that we can do.
What about at nighttime?
At night, there's occasionally, in the right time of year, if the weather's bad enough, you can find a shelter.
Okay, and that's from November to May, is that right?
Sometimes, yeah. Okay. Sometimes they cut it short. It all depends on how much they want to throw for funding.
It's been very interesting that while, in West Berkeley, we have Berkeley Youth Alternatives, which has been there for over 30-some years, and YAY, which is who we're talking about, the city somehow hasn't been able to find enough money for the shelter to be year-round and for the daytime services to be year-round. And for a little bit of time when they were, there was a big difference on the number of young people who were participating. I've never believed that our young folks are service resistant or that they don't want to get help. It's that to approach them, we're going to need a great deal more skill and compassion, and let them know that we really care about them, for them to even believe that the service we're going to send them to is going to help them. So that trust has never been built between the young folks that are on the streets and at least the political spectrum of this town, because there hasn't been a conversation, like you said. Nobody asks them what they need. Yeah. And I think we need to do that.
The National Law Center on Homelessness and Poverty is putting a report out next week, and they've been doing research into youth homelessness. And they've found that 40% of homeless young people have come out of foster houses in which they've been beaten. 25% have been propositioned by their foster caretakers. 20% had to leave home because their parents didn't accept their sexual orientation. So it's no wonder that a large chunk of people are not going to be automatically trusting of the adult world. I don't think that there's been any convincing evidence that there's any significant group of homeless people who are service resistant. I mean, whatever that's supposed to mean. The issue is that we clearly don't have enough services. I mean, one really sad irony is that the youth shelter won't open until the month of the election. And that's so depressing. But the other side of it is that what services exist need to be presented in an appropriate manner, and there needs to be peer outreach. I mean,
yes, there have to be young people on the street working with young people. I mean, we have to put that in place. A number of us service providers did meet with the mayor in a last-ditch effort to sort of say, come on, the reality is that there aren't enough services for youth, so where is that part going to be? And didn't hear much because there isn't that much money. And so what the plan in the future might be, you cut the existing services and you take that money and put it towards youth. But then you see an increase in adult homelessness and family homelessness. And I don't believe that there isn't money. I just believe that that is not a priority in this town, because business would be much happier if the kids just went to Santa Cruz or to Oregon or somewhere else. So it's in this really unfriendly atmosphere, I've been very impressed by how many businesses have decided to put up the signs in their windows. And so that seems like, that's a really good start for the campaign. So we've got not that many days left. Would you like to say something to the audience in terms of how they can participate?
Absolutely. So we're running a very grassroots campaign. It's going to be won or lost based on our ability to mobilize volunteers. So we need a lot of help. We need a lot of feet on the ground. We need Berkeleyans talking to Berkeleyans about why this is bad for Berkeley. And you can help out. You can sign up through our website. We're noonsberkeley.com. You can email us. Our email address is right there. We're going to be a volunteer-run campaign, but there are costs. We need money for flyers. We need money for signs. We need money for banners. We need money for coffee to send people out precinct walking. And people can also donate online. So those two things, we need your feet and we need your wallets. And both of those people can sign up online. If people don't have internet access or they don't feel comfortable giving money online or contacting us via the internet, our office is located on Shattuck Street, 3122 Shattuck, and they can write to us there, or during business hours they can stop by.
Is it tougher to be a woman and be on the street? And will this law affect women differently than guys?
As a woman, that's kind of a double-edged blade right there, because for some cases it's harder for women on the streets because there are a lot of people that would prey on weaknesses or things like that. But then on the other side, or in the other hand, some women have it a lot easier because they find somebody that'll take care of them and keep them safe. But I mean, at that same time, that makes it harder because it's hard to be an independent woman on the streets. You really need to either have multiple women with you or have a man with you, which is really messed up. But it's a harsh world out here, and it's hard on women, and it's hard on children, and it's hard on everybody. The streets, it's really no joke. It's not an easy life.
Osha, how is it possible that a law can be passed that's so clearly earmarked for a particular population in a city, even though the language says it'll apply to everybody? We know, that what they're talking about. Isn't there anything in the legal system that sort of says, you can't pass laws that just affect certain people? I mean, we went through the civil rights movement. We went through all of that.
Absolutely.
What are we doing?
Well, there should be. There should be that in the legal system. I mean, the problem is that because we live in a system where there's rich and poor, and where largely the rich are running things, they do not want to pass, to have as a principle in our Constitution that discriminating against poor people is a violation of their right of equal protection, although we all know it is. So while it is against the law, the Constitution, to discriminate on the basis of race or gender, so far, according to the courts, you can discriminate against homeless folks on the ground as long as you have some rational basis for doing it. So if they say, well, we have a rational basis, it's bad for business and it's scaring people and it's crime, that probably is enough, although we don't know. I mean, this is an area where, what the Constitution says, what the law is, always depends on what the last court opinion it says, and what the court opinions say are often influenced by what the popular movements are. So we had good law coming out of the Supreme Court when there was a powerful civil rights movement. We have terrible laws coming out now. So,
because it seems, like you've said, city after city, the populace is voting, and then we're all in this together, but I'm asking you, are you planning that if it's defeated and enforced that you would
we will
take it to court or do whatever is necessary?
I mean, they certainly should expect that there will be lawsuits around this. Absolutely. Because the language, whatever the language is, but depending on how they enforce it, there could be many problems. If they enforce it in such a way that people's right to assemble, which is a First Amendment right, is affected, they can be sued. Absolutely. And the other thing I will tell them and tell you is that we're committed to representing every single person who gets one of these tickets. And we will go to court, and they're not going to plead not guilty to a single one of them. And we will fight every single one of them. We will take the cops who issue those tickets to court and make them explain why they did it. And this is not going to be particularly, I would think, the best use of our police force to have them sitting around, not in Berkeley, they have to go all the way down to Oakland dealing with this. So yeah, I mean, this is going to use police resources, it's going to use legal resources, it's going to potentially involve us in lawsuits, and so on and so forth.
It really seems. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add on to that. I wanted to clarify first of all that we want to defeat S. S would pass a sit-lie law, and we're opposed to that. So we're no on S. The second thing I wanted to add was that San Francisco had a sit-lie law from 1968 when it was passed by our Board of Supervisors in order to target hippies until 1979. And by that time, the use of the law had changed. The police were no longer interested in targeting hippies. They were interested in targeting gay men in the Castro, which is our gay neighborhood in San Francisco, and also religious leafleters in Fisherman's Wharf. And it was challenged 3 times on unconstitutionality as applied. And the first 2 challenges were successful, and by the third challenge, the city threw up its hands and said, fine, we can't enforce this constitutionally. And they took the law off the books. And it was 30 years until they tried to pass a sit-lie law again. And I think that we're likely to see the same thing happen. Berkeley is going to be only the second city which has had to face a sit-lie law at the ballot. Everywhere else, it's been passed by the legislature. And in fact, the city council could have passed a sit-lie law, but I don't think there were enough city council members who actually wanted to.
I don't think they could have, because I don't think the 5 votes would have been there.
But they had the authority.
Once they had the authority, but once it was like, we'll let the people decide, it was like, oh yeah, that's really good. Let the people decide. I'm really interested in how the campaign is moving forward, and really asking people to send in money, because I know we need volunteers. So I'm going to ask those of you who watch this show and have sent in comments that you'd like to see the kinds of guests we bring to this show, please do everything possible to defeat Measure S. Osha,
we have a website.
NoOnSBerkeley.com.
Or newsberkeley. No on S.
One thing we're going to do is we're going to have fun defeating this.
We are going to have a fun campaign.
Yeah.
We're going to defeat it. We're not going to, say, oh, it doesn't matter the past. We're going to beat it in the court. It's going to be declared. No, we want to defeat it in the ballot box. And whatever you say about it's clearly a violation of human rights. Fundamental human rights. To sit, to be able to rest. I mean, it's absolutely crazy that Berkeley should be going. And the real prize, as Bob said, if Berkeley, with its liberal reputation, passes it, it's going to open up the floodgates of these laws all across the country. And that's a real disaster. And it puts Berkeley right there at the forefront of this whole, so basically Republican position of blaming the poor, blaming the people, blaming workers with their pensions, blaming unions, blaming all those folks on the bottom for the problems of our economies. It's just a part of it. And we can't let Berkeley take the lead in that direction. It's just,
it would be tragic.
It would be
especially
really,
with the history that Berkeley has.
It would be really sad.
How good we've been around civil rights and human rights all around the world. And we've taken positions. And then
Well,
when
we
it comes
can't
to our
be
own
good. Yeah,
city,
we can't be good.
we're just absolutely, I don't want to use a word that's coming up, so I won't, but I think we were not thinking that our city council members and the mayor just kind of pushed it through and didn't give it enough thought in terms of human cost. You know, leave alone the financial cost. Every time one of these kids is told no, not wanted, you know, what that does to their spirit and soul is really tragic.
Absolutely.
And so we appeal to you to please fund this campaign, come out and volunteer. If you need more information, we will have that listed for you all through this show. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Boona.
Maybe we'll see you again in November and be celebrating.
Excellent.
Let's hope so. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Like, what would be real solutions for helping people get the services?
A real solution would be to bring together all of the nonprofits in the general Berkeley area, put them under an umbrella nonprofit of sorts, put them in a centralized location near the downtown area, not generally in the specific downtown area, but somewhere in between Telegraph and the downtown area where the majority of the migrant and homeless people are. If there was a building there where there was shelters, food, and resources to get into housing, that we didn't have to go from one side of the town to the other side, all the way to a different town to go somewhere else to talk about thinking about going somewhere else, then to maybe get on a waiting list. And the waiting lists for housing can take up to 2 years. Like, I'm a prior foster kid, and I turn 21 next year. I don't get my housing after I'm 21. And I've been on a waiting list for housing since I was 18. So, and I'm a prior foster kid. Like, I quote unquote have more rights to housing from the government than even most homeless people, and I still can't get into housing.
Okay, first of all, like, only the first block is owned by the private company. This is public sidewalk.
Yeah.
This is their property.
Yeah.
Public sidewalk. As
Yeah,
in,
you're right about that.
This is public sidewalk and this is private property.
Yeah.
That's the sidewalk. So if we sit on the sidewalk, you can't give us a ticket. We're not obstructing the sidewalk because it's only obstruction if a person tries to step over you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
If a person has to step over you to continue down the sidewalk, then it's obstruction.
What if your right to sit on the sidewalk is taken away? How would it impact your life?
It wouldn't impact my life big time, but it's. I mean, I don't think impact is the right word. I think the fact that you should be able to do it. I mean, if that's part of what we're allowed to do in this country, if we're not hurting anybody, I don't see what the problem is. It's not going to impact my life where I'm going to, go cry or something, or have to go seek emotional support. But if you take that away, then what's next? You can't have backpacks this size. You can only have backpacks this. Which is what they're doing with this, by the way.
Yeah.
And oh, well then who decides which one's big? And then does it become color? And then pretty soon you don't like my earlobes. And then before you know it, I'm on a train going to a camp somewhere. So.
And how's it feel being out here with your dogs and stuff?
Well, that's my part here. But it's a bit difficult outside. I mean, it makes them a stronger breed, a stronger dog, but I can tell that she's uncomfortable. She's always shivering outside. Just being over here, it actually helps because the heat from the BART station helps us out. If we're not allowed to sit over here, my dog's gonna freeze. Not just saying that she's gonna freeze, but I could freeze myself. This is the only one spot we can go to that I can actually bring a dog. So if they take away our right to sit down out here, it's gonna affect me greatly because I have no place to go. I don't have an ID yet, so I can't get a job to get an apartment. Therefore, I need places to sit down outside so I can actually get my day together, figure out what I'm going to do. If I'm being hassled by a cop, I'm not going to be able to do anything all day. So I'm constantly going to be having to move around. I'll never be able to get to appointments because I won't be able to sit down somewhere and wait for my appointment without being hassled. I won't be able to go wait in lines for at homeless places and sit down on the sidewalk if my legs start getting tired because I'm going to have to worry about getting a ticket somewhere.
So this line law, this sin law will affect you big time.
Greatly.
How long have you been on the streets?
I'm from Rhode Island. I've been on the streets about almost 7 years.
7 years here in California, or just in general?
8 months.
8 months in California. Have you been getting cited or harassed by the police often?
On Telegraph, I got cited twice for sitting down, and I said that law hasn't been put into effect yet, so you can't really do anything about it. And I wrote the ticket up in the cops'
Yeah,
face.
so if you get cited, you should bring it down to that.
Because you're not blocking the sidewalk. I could walk. And you know what I'm saying?
If I'm blocking, usually somebody will come along and be like,
Another thing that's ridiculous about, like me personally, I know a lot of people forget what the date is. Like we don't know Monday, Tuesday, if it's the 5th or the 6th. That's really easy to forget out here. Plus, when we get the tickets, we're gonna have to show up in court. If we don't show up in court or forget to go to ticket, that becomes a warrant. And then that warrant leads to a jail sentence. Not only are we being hassled out here on the street, they're taking our freedom away. We're being basically kicked out of a city where we can't sit down anymore. We got to go somewhere else. It's like we're being like exiled out of here. Or the consequences, getting a jail sentence, fines we can't pay. I mean, I'm out here to juggle,
And then what happens? You go to Santa Rita?
Yeah.
And then they drop you, let you go in the middle of the night, and you have to try to find your way back.
Yeah. And
so there's a lot of hurdles.
This is my shopping cart too, and I'd be lucky if they take some of the gear at my shopping cart. Most likely they just leave it there on the street, so it gets pillaged, and now I'm out of everything. The little I did have, gets taken.
So what do you think we should do to end the stereotyping, to dissolve it?
But to know that we once too were in civilization as well. We just some of us have lost our jobs, some of us got evicted. So therefore some of us are out here. Yes, the streets do demoralize some people, but it's not like that with everybody. People need to realize that, yes, we're just like everybody else walking around out here. If we get tired, we're gonna want to find a place to sit down.
Right.
We might be able to every once in a while sit down inside of a restaurant because we get up a couple of bucks here and there, but it's not always like that. We need places outside to sit down so that we can be comfortable. That's what everybody in the world's looking for, is comfortability. By them putting that law in the place, they're gonna take away our comfortability. Then what's there to live for? We don't really have much out here to live for as it is. We're trying to survive out here, getting what we need for shelter, food, and supplies. We don't need people out here hassling us about our day-to-day activities. If we're not affecting anybody directly, leave us alone.
It's very unfair for the city to say that people can't sit on the sidewalk because there's not a lot of places for us to go to hang out as youth and as a homeless person. I would say that, for us to set up our stands and stuff like that, it's dignity. It's just good. You know what I mean? It's a good place, and it gives the city a healthy look.
It isn't just street performers like me or homeless people. It could be you. You could be walking and feel dizzy and need to sit down. And should you be ticketed for that? No. So don't let them take away your rights as an American. and a human being.
So we started in front of Cody's, which was originally set up as a free speech area by Fred Cody himself back in '69. So basically what I'm hoping is people will kind of spread up and down Telegraph and you know, because sitting is the protest, because that's what they're trying to make illegal. They've already made lying against the law back in '98, and they're using obstructing the sidewalk when people clearly aren't doing that.
And I am here to advocate against the Sit and Lie ordinance. And Julia Vandegrail gave me a poem to read, and it's about crackdown on street teenagers. The young street kids aren't violent or crazy or screaming. They just sit around cuddling puppies and each other. And they have to stand up to bother somebody. And it's not too much trouble. They share crumbling day-old donuts and black nail polish. And I write about them. The city just sent a big police presence to arrest my poems. There's 2 cops cars on the avenue, 3 of you count the one that went up the next block, a pair patrolling the sidewalk, and a huge black paddy wagon. And I think I saw in an Al Patron movie, all this to arrest my poems. And I can't go downtown to get them back eventually the way people do with the tow-away car. The sidewalk is unconventionally clear. There should be kids in black t-shirts and spiking leather bracelets, occasionally slapping a broken string guitar. There should be a girl with an orange dreadlock and braids, beating her small drum with her belly button, and there should be a boy drawing happy monsters on the pavement with colored chalk. The city says teenagers block doorways and are bad for business. But poetry is my business, and this crackdown is bad for my business.
Okay, so we're here today from Suitcase Clinic and Habitat for Humanity because we believe in justice and we feel that public space should remain public and that making it illegal to sit down isn't going to solve any of our problems but just increase the prices that we pay for citations and tickets and criminal justice that doesn't need to be spent, and it should instead be spent on helping out our neighbors and our community.
I'd just like to say that I think it's crazy to make a law against sitting down. That's just so un-American. I can't believe that someone would even try to do that. It's just crazy. And if they got away with it, I would be really discouraged. So let's make it not happen. All right?